The story opens with a young man taking his last breaths on a battlefield while he listens to his enemies casually talking about green tea. With a sudden jolt, he wakes up and looks shaken as the radio plays in the background, warning people to be careful of the rays on this bright and sunny day. He slowly sits up in bed, realizing that he was just dreaming, but it is surprising to him how clearly he remembers everything, including losing his arm. Just then, the soldier from the bed above passes a page to him, telling him to sign it. Kiji takes the page from him, still lost in his thoughts about not wanting to die in his dream without ever going to the battlefield in real life. Once he takes a good look at the page, he complains to his colleague that he has already signed it. His friend Jin Yonabaru doesn't pay attention to his protest, just telling him to quickly sign it. Jin explains that it is a signed confession about stealing alcohol from the PX, and they are going to steal it to have a party tonight. He continues that after the war, they will turn in the confession signed by the person who will die in the battle. Despite Jin's seemingly perfect plan, Kiji doesn't understand why they have to follow this tradition since they are going to get ready for battle in the afternoon. Jin hangs his head from his bed to look at Kiji and says that he is mistaken because the party is tonight and they are leaving tomorrow. Kiji is shocked to hear that, as he clearly remembers that he decided to stay back and read instead of drinking at the party last night. His strange attitude worries Jin, who says that he can understand his nervousness because it will be his first time on the battlefield, but he should relax. Kiji slowly figures that everything was just a dream and he has just freaked out a lot, and he should relax since he is the jacket soldier who is going to his first battle tomorrow. He narrates that currently, mankind is in the middle of an unprecedented war, and it is not a battle against other humans, but against the monsters called mimics. No one knows where these monsters came from or what kind of creatures they are, and the only thing clear is that they are trying to wipe out humanity. The adults discuss how fighting these monsters is like a sci-fi story, but for him, it is just another normal day since the battle has been going on since he was a child. Humans created the Unit Defense Force to fight against these monsters, but this long, exhausting war has worn everyone down. Okinawa is overrun with mimics, and humans worldwide are being hunted. Now, hordes of mimics have launched an attack on Japan. The base Thara line on the Boso Peninsula stands as the front line, and Japan remains the only industrial nation capable of producing composite armor for battle jackets. To defend it, the U.S. Special Forces, led by Rita, the only unit to have defeated the mimics, has been deployed. Tomorrow he'll fight alongside them. His thoughts are interrupted as Jin climbs down from his bed, casually advising him to just avoid shooting anyone in the back, stressing that overthinking will only make things harder. He continues that the people who come out of battle with all their marbles are weird, and he needs to be like their sergeant, who worked out his muscles to the point that his brain has shrunk. Jin is startled when suddenly the Sarge speaks in his ear, asking him if he wants some extra training. Standing up straight, Jin quickly salutes his sergeant, Bartolome Farrell, who asks him to repeat what he is saying about his mind. Jin stumbles upon his words as he answers Farrell, saying that he was just telling Kiji about how his strong mind is the result of his daily training. Ignoring him, Farrell turns to everyone else, telling them that at 900, the 1700 company is to fall into the number 1 training field. He asks them to spread the word to everyone else, otherwise, the soldiers just stand there, confused about what he said. Farrell shouts at them to repeat his order, and they quickly follow his instructions. He further informed them that their unit had a surprise inspection, and the team found a lot of deficiencies with their equipment. Everyone is shocked to hear that, but ignoring them, Farrell continues to say that the base commander is angry because the U.S. Special Forces are already here. Jin protests that it is not their fault, and his colleagues support his argument. Farrell replies that they should have been careful with their equipment and then leaves without saying anything else. The soldiers are wondering what kind of punishment they will receive since they have to leave for the battle tomorrow. Kiji comes forward, saying that it must be physical training. Jin is not happy with his answer, and Kiji tells him that he saw this in his dream and that they will have to do push-ups for 3 hours. His answer shocks everyone, and they just hope that it doesn't come true. Later that day, they are all forced to do push-ups, and while struggling to hold his posture, Jin says to Kiji that he is right. Kiji replies that it is not his fault while thinking about how it is strange that his dream came true. The instructor shouts at them to count louder, earning silent curses from them. Another friend of Kiji tells him to look at the side where the U.S. Special Forces are standing. Sweating profusely, Kiji looks where his friend pointed and spots the best jacket soldier in the world, Rita. Jin is also looking at the side, and is shocked to see how Rita looks a lot shorter than he had thought. Their friend explains that she's the Full Metal Girl effortlessly taking down mimics, and warns Kiji not to judge women by their looks. But Kiji just stares at Rita, thinking she looks more like a puppy than a warrior. Jin chimes in, mentioning rumors that the US military unit is just propaganda to promote new weapons and tactics. When Kiji asks if they're just for show, Jin nods, adding that this makes a woman the perfect leader. Kiji just hummed in reply while trying to remember if he had seen the girl somewhere before. Jin notices his unwavering stare at Rita and playfully asks him if he likes her. Before Kiji can reply to him, he is startled when Rita looks at him, accidentally meeting his eyes. He quickly diverts his eyes, but Rita starts walking toward them, causing all of them to start panicking. She silently moves past them and goes to the instructors conducting the training. After getting permission to speak, she asks if she can also join the training. The officer is surprised to hear her request, so she explains that she never got the chance to participate in this kind of training, so she would like to join the soldiers so their operation tomorrow will be conducted successfully. The instructor allows her to join the training, and she goes back, taking a position right beside Kiji. He is nervous as Rita addresses him, asking if there is something on her face because he is staring at her. Kiji stutters, replying that it is nothing. Rita continues that it is strange for her that someone is staring at her, and Kiji quickly apologizes, saying that he wasn't doing it for any particular reason. Rita doesn't say anything else, while Kiji secretly peeks at her, thinking about how she just looks like an ordinary girl. Soon their training is over, and as they are all getting freshened up, Kiji is relieved that the training only lasted for 1 hour instead of 3, like he had seen in his dream. Just then Jin approaches him, excitedly saying that they will party tonight, but Kiji refuses to tell his friend that he is not feeling well and just wants to stay in bed. Later he is lying in bed, reading a book, which confuses him a little since he has never read that book before, but he already knows the lines. He sits up, mumbling that maybe Jin told him the story before. His attention is diverted toward the loud noise of his friends partying in the room next to him. Kiji is nervous about facing the mimics for the first time tomorrow, and it also comes as a surprise that he will get to fight alongside Rita. He is planning to survive the battle and assures himself that it was just a dream and that he will not die tomorrow no matter what. The next morning they are all getting ready to depart, and their leader announces that they are going out to Kotoishi Island in the Ogasawara Island chain. They all gear up properly, and their instructors keep motivating them, saying how they will reclaim the island today. He continues that if mimics managed to invade Tokyo, they would crush it in a matter of days, so now the soldiers must save the lives of 35 million people. After reminding soldiers that their family and friends are also among these people, he tells them to crush the mimics to pieces. After his speech, they all started advancing with their weapons, trying their best to defeat any mimics that came their way. Kiji seems to be struggling in the fight, so the sergeant tells him to calm down, saying that they just need to get rid of the mimics that got past the main forces. Stuttering, Kiji replies that he got that while telling himself that it is a real battle and he needs to focus. Just then, the surgeon points out that the mimics are coming and tells everyone to look forward. It suddenly hits Kiji that this is the real battlefield, and he starts firing with all of his colleagues. They continue to fire their weapon relentlessly, finally managing to look at some mimics for the first time. Seeing the horde of mimics marching toward them, Jin shouts that others must be doing nothing since there are still a lot of monsters. He then tells Kiji to move, saying that they will not last longer if they keep sitting there. Jin moves quickly, trying to leave, but soon a blast hits him, crushing him into pieces right in front of Kiji's eyes. He shouts desperately for his friend, and when he looks back, he spots a mimic there. Before he gets a chance to escape, he is also hit by a blast that has torn apart his arm. He yells because of the extreme pain and burning, and he just lies on the ground, knowing that he is going to die any minute now. Kiji suddenly wakes up in his bed, in the same position as before, with his body fully intact. He quickly sits up, shocked at what is happening and trying to understand how he got there, when suddenly Jin gives him a paper, asking him to sign. Kiji quickly looks at the paper and is shocked to see that it is the same petition as before. Just then, he recalls the horrific way he died in the battle, and he throws up in disgust. Jin quickly looks down from his bunk bed, but Kiji is still trying to understand what is happening since it all feels too real to be a dream. He comes out of his thoughts when Jin asks him if he is feeling okay because they are rolling out for battle tomorrow. The repetitive events are another shock for Kiji, and he quickly opens the book he is reading. As expected, he can clearly remember every part of the specific scene from the book, but it should be impossible since he read that part the night before the battle, and he can't dream about the book he hasn't read. With his weird behavior, Jin comes down to check on him, but Kiji pays him no mind as he is busy trying to grasp the situation. He recalls how he had the same dream in the morning, where his arm was blown away and he died, and now he realizes that maybe he wasn't dreaming that too. Kiji is devastated when he realizes that if he stays here, he will be sent to battle and will die there again. Jin calls his name, but Kiji ignores him and instead starts running, desperately wanting to escape this place. He wants to go to any other place because staying here means that he will have to face that pain again. While running, he couldn't see the maid, Rachel, and bumped into her, causing her to crash on the ground with all of her vegetables. Kiji also bumps his head during the crash, but he ignores his wound even when Rachel points out that he is bleeding. Rachel apologizes to him since he bumped his head against the cart, but Kiji just ignores her. He is ready to run away again, but has to stop when the surgeon comes there and asks if he knocked down the cart. Kiji admits to this, and when the surgeon tries to take a look at his wound, he smacks his hand away, saying that he is fine. The surgeon then tells him that he can skip the PT session and asks him to get his wound checked at the infirmary. The surgeon then goes to the dorm to talk to other soldiers, while Kiji takes his chance and runs away. He manages to escape from the base and is satisfied with his decision to run away since he is going to die if he stays there. He easily passed through the security guards because their main job was to stop any suspicious person who approached the base and not keep an eye on young soldiers. He is desperate to escape his death and keeps running on the deserted road, hoping to reach a town soon from where he can travel to any other place. He stops in his tracks when he spots an old man and a young kid walking toward him. The old man comments that it is a surprise to see him since it is rare to see any soldiers around here. Kiji is also shocked to see civilians but stays silent as the old man shares how his granddaughter keeps saying there is something wrong with the color of the sea, so he came to look at it. The relief finally hits Kiji as he realizes that he has finally made it off the base and is now inside the absolute defense zone where he will be safe. Just as he is thinking about it, something hits the old man, beheading him in front of his eyes. Kiji stares at him, shocked as the blood pours out of his neck. The young girl looks up at her grandfather, but just then another strike of lightning comes, doing the same thing with her. Devastated, Kiji looks at the side and finds a mimic there. He is shocked to see a lone mimic in the defense zone and tries to run away from there, but he is hit by a lightning strike, which blows away his leg this time, and he dies. Kiji wakes up in his bed again with the same radio news playing in the background, and Jin again passes him the petition page. He sits up on the bed, with his head hanging low, and asks Jin if he has a gun. Jin hands him the gun, surprised at his sudden interest in the weapon, and warns him to be careful since it is loaded. Jin tells him that he will also get one once he becomes a corporal, and says that it is not effective against those mimics. Suddenly, Jin's eyes widen in shock as Kiji points the gun in his mouth and shoots. Kiji dies again and, as expected, wakes up in the same situation. This time he just lies there, finally realizing how he died in a different situation. And the times just loop, where he comes back to this day with his memories still intact. He doesn't know why this is happening in this world and asks Jin what will happen if things just keep repeating. Jin is confused by his question, so Kiji explains that it is like going back to the beginning, which happens in board games. Finally understanding him, Jin replies that it depends on what is happening in those repetitive events and says how he will never want to experience the Okinawa landing operation again, even if they put him in front of a firing squad. Kiji doesn't reply to him, thinking about how he would just come back if he were in front of the firing squad. He is curious about what his friends would think if they knew about this, since it is clear that he is the only one in this loop, and he is the only one to face the fear of dying every day. Suddenly feeling determined, he is ready to stay alive if this is the only way to get revenge from this world, and he will push it through to the very end. Sitting up in bed, he starts to note down how many times he has died and writes the number 5 on his hand. Feeling that this small number is where his battle against this world begins, Kiji recalls how, when he was a kid, he often used to pretend to fight the aliens. Among the other kids, he was the one who was good at playing the hero who got killed. He always ran in front of the enemies, taking all the hits, which gave the others courage to fight and win the war. It was just a children's game about death, but now that he has already experienced death 4 times, he knows that real death is nothing like that in the game. The real death is very agonizing, and he has no intention of becoming a dead hero in this real battle. He is determined to not keep dying, and as he holds his push-up position, his only goal is to stay alive during the battle, but he doesn't know how he will be able to do that against those cruel mimics. He comes out of his thoughts when his friend asks him to look at the side where U.S. military forces are standing. Kiji looks at Rita, the strongest jacket soldier, and Jin comments that Rita is just a poster girl. Kiji realizes that this is a lie. He recalls how the first time he died, which he thought was a dream up until now, he saw Rita fighting there. She was holding a huge axe in her hands and fought bravely, killing the mimics mercilessly. He vividly recalls what Rita wore that day and their conversation. She had asked someone if the green tea served at the end of a meal in Japan was free. The question had actually come from a dying Kiji who struggled to answer. Seeing this, Rita admitted she once believed everything written in books, but realized it was better to ask locals instead. She then told Kiji to take deep breaths, but instead he asked if he was going to die. Rita, without hesitation, confirmed it. After introducing herself, she assured him she would stay until the end. His eyes widened in devastation as she explained she would remove his jacket's battery once he passed and urged him to let go instead of fighting death. Just then, voices crackled through the radio, soldiers reporting that the Alpha server and vicinity were secure, followed by casual chatter about finally getting to eat their pizza. Kiji is shocked to hear them talking about pizza, but before anything can be discussed further, they are attacked by some mimics. Rita quickly picks up her weapon, telling Kiji to just stay there as she goes to fight against those monsters. With her huge axe, she starts cutting the mimics instantly, surprising Kiji with how fast she is. As Rita continues to fight against those mimics, Kiji slowly moves from his place, wanting to kill at least one mimic before dying. He manages to stand on his feet and get rid of one mimic, but just then he is hit by another attack and faces death for the first time. Back in the present, he realizes how Rita is very strong, and it is understandable how she survived all those battles, and the only thing he managed to do was kill one mimic. Jin is the one to gain his attention again, as he comments that Rita just came to look down at them. Kiji is confused to hear him say that since he remembers that Rita was supposed to join the training and stay right beside him. But things happened differently. He figures that it happened because he wasn't staring at her, and this also makes him realize that he can change the events of the future. This gives him new hope because even though his chances of staying alive are very low, he can increase them gradually, and one day he might be able to change something. As Kiji walks back toward his dream, he stretches his arms, thinking about today's 3-hour training. Next time, he'll stare at Rita. Maybe they'll cut it down to an hour. The thought reminds him that, despite the loop, he's still a rookie and needs to find a way to grow stronger. He notices some soldiers playing chess. One complains that Jin keeps losing the same way as if he isn't thinking ahead. Jin shrugs, saying he relies on instinct, something a beginner could never pull off. The other player counters that analyzing moves and practicing regularly are key to improving. Kiji listens closely and has a realization. He needs to sharpen his combat skills. Wasting no time, he heads to Sergeant Farrell, the most experienced soldier on base and the one who has survived the longest. When he doesn't say anything, Farrell asks him if he is nervous since they are going to the battle tomorrow. Kiji is still thinking about how Farrell was also a drill instructor and is the only person who can help him in training. Finally breaking his silence, he says to Farrell that since he still keeps up with his training, will it be okay if he joins him for training? Farrell first dismisses the idea as useless, but noticing Kiji's confusion instead quotes an old saying, "Strike down the enemy and learn." He explains that master swordsmen, having fought countless battles, keep killing because real experience is the best teacher. Only those who survive will learn something from battle, he adds. Kiji smiles at this, realizing he has unlimited chances to fight. Farrell, puzzled by his reaction, watches as Kiji quickly apologizes, secretly thinking about how his time loop lets him train endlessly in real combat. Since he has all the time in the world, Kiji is sure that if he keeps practicing, one day he will rise to the level of Rita and those swordsmen. Farrell is still weirded out by his smile and strange expression, and then he tells him to come back here in 15 minutes in first-year gear. A little confused, Kiji asks if he needs to wear full battle gear and gets scolded by Farrell, who says that a soldier can't practice without his gear. Kiji runs to wear his gear while thinking about how he might get the slightest chance in tomorrow's battle, and if he improves his combat skills, he finds a way to avail himself of even the slightest opportunity. He is hoping that if he trains hard enough to overcome any hurdle that comes his way, then one day he might wake up in the world where he gets to see tomorrow. Kiji found himself stuck in a time loop after his first battle, and after some efforts, he managed to gather some rules for this loop. The first rule of this loop is that when he dies, he returns to a day before the battle, and no matter where he dies, the first rule will remain intact. He also realizes that there is no escaping from the loop, and no matter how many times he dies, he will remember everything. The last rule of this loop is that the future can be changed every time. If he wants to escape this loop, he needs to be strong enough to defeat death, and for that, he needs to improve his combat skills. Until now, he was just a normal rookie soldier, but everything changed when he kept waking up after dying. Currently, he is in his 12th loop and is running fearlessly on the battleground. His fellow soldiers are worried that he will get killed if he keeps running like this, but Kiji ignores them, knowing that running is more important than his dying. When he started training with Sergeant Farrell, the first thing he learned was to walk in the jacket. Farrell tells him to turn off the auto balancer, which confuses Kiji since he can stay upright because of the balancer. Farrell tells him that the auto balancer will slow his movement by a fraction of a second, and Kiji is well aware that this short period can mean death on the battlefield. After that training, he ran through the battlefield and died 7 times, and now in his 12th loop, he can run through the battlefield however he pleases. Despite running hard, he gets surrounded by a horde of mimics and dies, entering the next loop. Kiji's next target is to learn to attack, and he recalls how the jacket soldiers are given several weapons, starting with the 20mm rifle. This rifle is powerful enough to tear a human being into pieces, but it is not very effective against mimics. Rocket launches and fuel air grenades are the same, and the only weapon effective against mimics is the pile driver, which shoots tungsten carbide stakes. Deciding on the weapons, Kiji goes into the infirmary and informs the guard there that he wants to use his jacket for training. The guard is surprised by his request and says that Kiji should rest since he is going to the battle tomorrow. When Kiji insists, the guard argues that if he wants to use the pile driver, he will have to get close to the mimic so he can punch him. Kiji is not very repulsed by the idea of going near those monsters, and when he goes to the battle next time, he spots a lone mimic that can be his perfect target. He slowly creeps on the monster, determined to get close to the mimic, but before he can grab his weapon, the mimic sends a flash of lightning right through his face. He jolts awake in bed, startling Jin, who rushes to find out if he is okay. Kiji doesn't reply to him, as he is willing to stay calm and remind himself that he can't be afraid since death is his ally. He keeps practicing killing the mimic and is ecstatic when he finally manages to get rid of one mimic in his 21st loop. His first kill gives him a new surge of motivation, and he is determined to be stronger so he can kill more mimics. He comes out of his thoughts when he finds Jin struggling to hold his ground against a mimic. Kiji takes quick action, and using his pile driver, he gets rid of the mimic, saving his friend. Jin is shocked to see him fighting like that, but Kiji does not pay him any attention and runs away after telling him to be careful because more mimics are coming from the east. The other soldiers just stand there in surprise, talking about how they never knew that Kiji was this strong. Holding his weapon in his hand, Kiji continues to walk away, thinking about how he became a strong soldier that even Farrell is impressed by. Despite his power, he kept dying repeatedly, and he knew that there was only one reason for that. In his 47th loop, Kiji is kneeling behind a bush near the armory and notices the same guards from every day, standing there with their M16s. Kiji is searching for something since the pile driver is not very effective, because it only has 20 rounds, which means he can only kill 20 mimics. All those times, he died because he ran out of ammo and needed a weapon that had no limitations. For that, he needed to meet with the person inside the warehouse. Just as the car of the company commander, whom he has been waiting for, comes there, he repeats the course of events that are going to happen in his mind. He knows when the guards will salute the commander, so he can start moving. The car will move toward the fork in the road, and at the same time, the cleaning lady will come out from the corner. The guards look toward the car, and this is the time when he quickly slips past them. One of the guards will turn his way, but his view is blocked because of the other guard's huge body. Perfectly following through on the regular events, Kiji easily sneaks into the armory and finds a girl working with weapons there. When Kiji greets the girl, she is startled by his voice and accidentally drops her glasses. He helps her put the glasses back on, and when she is standing on her feet again, she introduces herself as Shasta Rail. Kiji replies that he knows her, and that is why he came to see her. Shasta tries to refuse him, thinking that he wants something else, but Kiji quickly points towards a weapon, saying that he wants that. Shasta is confused by his request, as Kiji confirms that he wants a battle axe similar to Rita's. He is satisfied with his decision since he is tired of the ammo running out and needs a weapon that will not expire on the battlefield. Shasta is still shocked that he wants the axe, and when Kiji confirms again, she refuses to make the weapon for him, saying that she is busy right now with repairs and can't do that on such short notice. He calmly listens to her while recalling how she is the first lieutenant, and according to her file, she is the civilian tech who entered MIT at a very young age and graduated at the top of her class. She is also Rita's personal tech, even though it is hard to believe seeing her appearance. Kiji suddenly takes a memory chip from his pocket, asking Shasta if she needs it. She tries to snatch it from his hand, but Kiji quickly pulls his hand above his head, holding it out of her reach. Shasta desperately asks him to hand over the chip, and Kiji agrees to give it to her with the condition that she will build a battle axe for him. Shasta stops trying to snatch it from him and politely says to Kiji that he will get hurt, trying to imitate Rita because she is the only person who can handle such a weapon. Shasta tells him that the battle axe weighs 200 kilograms, and the inertia of swinging such a heavy metal will split his body into two. She continues that Rita doesn't use the auto balancer to use this weapon because she can't even make the tiniest mistake with her moves. Shasta reveals that Rita's jacket doesn't even have an auto balancer, and she is the only one to do that even in the elite squad, which makes her a very special soldier. Despite her warning, Kiji calmly says that removing the auto balancer is a good idea and tells her how he stopped using the balancer a long time ago. Shasta is still not convinced and sharply asks him if he is trying to be the next Rita. She says that Rita does not like what people think of her and tells him how when they met for the first time, Rita told her how she was happy to live in this battle era. She asks him if he can say the same thing, and then, realizing something, she quickly adds that she is not afraid of Rita. She tries to say something else, but Kiji stops her, saying that he knows that Rita is not cold-hearted like people say about her. He then adds that he doesn't want the axe because of Rita, but because he wants a weapon that doesn't run out of ammo, like the pile driver. Shasta's interest finally peaks when Kiji says he's fine with a spear or cutlass, he just needs a weapon to survive. Surprised, she notes that Rita once said something similar. Kiji, unfazed, says he's honored by the comparison and assures her he can handle the weapon, despite her warnings. Without warning, Shasta snatches the chip from his hand and rushes to her tools, saying she has extra steel and will make him a weapon right away. As she works, she remarks that he's the only one who truly recognizes the gap between himself and Rita, yet still wants to close it. Remembering something, she asks him about the number written on his hand. Her question surprises Kiji, and he eventually replies that it is something similar to crossing the number on a calendar. Shasta comments that it must be something important if he has written it in his hand, and asks if it is about his girlfriend's birthday. Kiji denies that it is not like that, and if he has to explain, the count is the number of days since he died. He is relieved when he finally gets his battle axe, and even though it might kill him in the process, the important thing is that the mimics can be shattered with just one hit of this axe. Kiji swings his axe around, killing all the mimics efficiently, but his rash actions cause Sergeant Farrell to die. He still keeps returning to the same day and now has the same schedule he follows daily, which includes training with Farrell and going to parties with Jin. Everything except his training is the same every day, and at this point, he can even follow the schedule in his sleep. The onion soup that is served in the cafeteria always spills at him with the same trajectory. Now, as he returns to the table with his soup, he hears some soldiers praising the soup in front of the chef named Rachel. At first, Kiji also found the soup tasty, but now, after eating the same thing for 80 days, he has grown tired of it, and food has become just a source of energy for him. With that, he also starts having a headache. Kiji raises his head when he hears some soldiers talking about Rita entering the cafe. Without even looking at the watch, he can tell that it is 11:40 hours, and as usual, Rita is eating lunch 3 tables away from him. Every day, he watches Rita eat. Even though he didn't choose this time on purpose, it just happened this way. He has memorized the events, knowing exactly when Rita will fail to pick up a bean and when she will eat a pickled plum. He stares at her back, thinking about how she acts very childish for her age since she is supposed to be 22, and he can admit that she would look cute if she wasn't wearing the military uniform. Kiji is surprised when another bulky soldier approaches and sharply asks if he is enjoying his food. Kiji calmly replies that it is normal to enjoy the food in such fine company, while thinking to himself how this is the first time that someone is trying to pick a fight with him. The soldier shouts that he looks like he is eating something disgusting, and food is the only thing enjoyable here, but Kiji's face is very disturbing. He stays silent as the soldiers pull him up by his shirt, causing his soup to spill down. Rachel quickly approaches them, shouting at them to stop fighting, and says to the bulky soldier that he is being too much. The soldier quickly leaves him and tells Rachel that she was the one who said how miserable Keiji looks while eating food. Listening to their argument, Keiji looks at his reflection on the plate and is surprised to see how bad he looks. Trying to defuse the fight, Rachel offers a shrimp to Keiji, but the soldier slams it away from her hand and drags Keiji back, saying that he still needs to deal with him. When the soldier tries to attack him, Keiji quickly moves out of the way, causing the soldier to crash into the chairs, while he calmly gives the shrimp back to Rachel. The soldier quickly stands up again, and as the other soldiers cheer for them to fight, he goes to punch Keiji again, but his attack goes in vain. Keiji is calm in his movements as he thinks about how anyone who thinks of a second as just a second is not a match for him anymore. Jin and his friends make a bet on him winning, but Keiji is still busy recalling how Farrell told him to break down every second. Since it is impossible to stretch time, they can instead carve the perception of time into finer pieces. Keiji is confident that he can prepare himself by figuring out what is going to happen next, and he can easily turn the situation in his favor. He continuously moves around, dodging every attack from the bulky soldier who is getting furious at his dodging. Keiji calmly accesses his movements, knowing that he is going to use a left hook, which he can easily avoid with just his upper body. Looking at the soldier, he can point out all the openings from where he can attack, but the soldier is oblivious to his power. As he dodges another punch, his friend encourages him to fight back, but Keiji is aware that if he wins this fight, the soldier will continue chasing him, which will affect his training. He decides to take a punch from the soldier, and just as Rachel tries to come in between them, Keiji gets punched in the face and falls. His friends quickly gather around him, saying how he has made them lose their money. Meanwhile, Rita finally stands up from her table, and everyone is shocked as she praises Keiji's moves. When Keiji wakes up, he sees Rachel standing beside him, asking if he is all right. With a swallowed eye, he slowly sits up straight and replies that he is fine. She seems relieved and apologizes on behalf of the bulky soldier, saying that he is really not a bad guy. Keiji quickly replies that he should be the one apologizing and then asks if he really looks miserable while eating. Rachel honestly replies that he looks like he is attending a funeral, which reminds Keiji how in his last loop, Sergeant Farrell got killed because of his selfish grandstanding. To him, it really feels like a funeral, but he doesn't mention that and instead says that he will be careful from now on. He is surprised when Rachel asks him why he didn't fight back, saying that it is obvious that he is a better fighter, but he seems to be holding back. Keiji casually replies that he is saving his energy for the real battle. Suddenly changing the topic, Rachel asks him if he is dating someone, and when he refuses, she offers to be with him for the night since he will be going to battle the next day. She quickly adds that she doesn't offer it to anyone, but Keiji refuses, saying that he is not the person she is looking for. He then says that he needs to train and then runs away from there, leaving Rachel sitting there. While running away, he keeps thinking about Rachel looking like a librarian. He had a crush on her back in high school. He was left here broken back then, but it had nothing to do with his application to the United Defense Force, and he likes to think that he wasn't some pathetic guy who couldn't express his feelings. He continues running and barges into the training room, where Sergeant Farrell repeats his usual dialogue. Keiji is happy to see his sergeant alive and recalls how the librarian used to say that we only live once, and if it were the same with him, he would have chosen to stay with Rachel for the night. As he loudly asks Farrell if he can train with him, he accepts that this is his life now. In the Loop 99, he dies 45 minutes after the start of the battle. During Loop 110, he realizes that Jin is the weak link in their line, which he uses to break through. During Loop 123, his headache, which started after the 5th loop, started getting worse. He continued his killing strike, and as the number of loops increased, he managed to stay alive for a longer period on the battlefield. He realizes that he has lost consciousness after 8 minutes of the battle, and even though he doesn't die, he gets caught in the loop, but he can only choose to accept his fate. During the 158th loop, Keiji is like a wing as he cuts through the horde of mimics, shocking his colleague with his movements. Jin comments that he thought Keiji was just holding that axe as a joke. Sergeant Farrell interrupts him and instructs that, as of now, the 17th Company will back off Keiji and tells everyone not to get in his way as he fights against those mimics. Everyone follows his orders, and Kiji informs Farrell that he is going in while thinking about how he is no longer a fragile soldier. He has become a machine using blood instead of oil, and a soldier who molds the events of war according to his will. Taking long jumps, he flies through the air, cutting any mimic that comes in his way. The US base unit is shocked when they spot the Japanese unit from the north approaching the Alpha server, since they didn't expect this to happen. As Kiji moves forward on the battleground, he finds a soldier lying there with a piece of metal stabbed in his shoulder. In his effort to distract the soldier, he asks him if he remembers the rugby match that was played a few months ago between their unit and how they had beaten him in that match. The soldier is shocked to hear his out-of-context conversation, but Kiji continues that it was some kind of intramural record. He then admits that he doesn't want to talk like this and is about to say something else, but stops and instead tells the soldier to take a deep breath. The soldier is confused by his strange questions, but seeing that he is talking fine now, Kiji helps him stand up, saying that he is indebted to him now. The soldier says that he is very rude, but Kiji just laughs, saying that they can just hope to be lucky. He runs onto the battlefield again, recalling how, once he was about to die for the first time, Rita kept him calm by randomly talking about green tea. Suddenly, there is a blast a few meters away from him, and Kiji instantly knows that Rita is there because wherever she goes, there is always a blast that shatters everything. Just as he expected, Rita comes out of there and declares that this area is cleared. Kiji knows how the soldiers gained hope when they saw Rita in her usual red jacket, and it was like they had fallen for her. He now knows that they gave her the nickname Metal Girl out of respect. He admits that he also started having feelings for Rita, but it is good that these feelings are one-sided. He is not in a position to fall in love because, even if he does, the time spent with the person will be lost once he goes into another loop. Just then another mimic comes in front of him, and he is surprised when he somehow recognizes that this mimic is the one who killed him for the first time. He is somewhat happy to face that mimic since now he can show him how strong he has become. Suddenly someone starts to talk to him on the radio, and he is shocked to recognize the voice as Rita's. Seeing his surprised expression, Rita confirms that she is talking to him and then asks how many loops he has passed. Pittsfield, Illinois was a small town with a population of 4,000 people, and it had a vast, beautiful sky. This is where she grew up, had average grades in junior high, strongly disliked green pepper, and was very good at playing horseshoes. One day, while working in the field with her father, she looked a little somber, which worried her father, and he promised to take her to town later. She was also good at pretending to look sad, which makes her a normal girl just like the majority of the population of America. Like promised, her father takes her to town in the evening and goes to buy coffee beans while she eagerly looks at jewelry. Just then, the news starts to play about how the military has been forced to retreat from Hawaii and return to its base in San Francisco. The old shopkeeper tells the girl's father that he brought the rare items yesterday after hearing the news about Hawaii. Her father replies that he is sure the mimics will not attack the town like this, but he is curious about what is going to happen. He continues how the scientists say that mimics are aliens, but since there is no way to communicate with them, it looks like the war will continue until one side is wiped out. The shopkeeper jokes that he is aware of that and asks if he can beat the mimics with jujitsu that he used to practice. He laughs at that, saying that it was a long time ago. The shopkeeper then turns toward the girl, asking if she is going to join the military because she is his daughter. He is about to reply, but the girl interrupts her father, saying that she will not join the military because she likes living in this town. That night there was heavy snowfall in the town, an unusually cold night of the winter. She wakes up because of some strange noise and goes to look out the window. She is shocked to see a huge monster attacking the people of the town. She stumbles back a little, and just then her father bursts open the door. He starts dragging her away quickly, and as she comes out of her house, she sees the whole town burning and mimics attacking people. Her father quickly leads her into an underground bunker and tells her not to come out, no matter what happens. She looks at her father for a moment, but she then notices her mother lying there with a huge gash in her stomach. She quickly goes to help her mother, telling her to just hang in there. Outside the bunker, her father gets in the car and crashes it into a mimic to kill it, but just then other mimics attack him from the side. Hearing the noise, the girl peeks out through the glass window and sees her father trying to distract the mimic and encourage it to attack him instead of going for his family. Tears stream down her cheeks as she sees her father taking his last breaths and murmuring that he wants her to live. When help arrives a while later, the soldiers spot her there. She quickly turns toward her mother, but to her utter devastation, her mother has also passed away. she just stands there, staring at the several dead bodies of her townspeople. The attack was conducted by just 3 scout mimics, which burned the whole town, killing all 1,500 people. The defense forces arrived 3 hours after the attack. She lost everything in the attack, and one of her distant relatives took her in. At the time, everyone who had turned 18 had the right to join the defense forces, but since she was too young to apply, she stole the passport of a female refugee named Rita, who was 3 years older than her, and went straight to the military unit. She has nothing to live for, and her only goal is to kill every mimic on the planet. 6 months after joining the military, Rita experienced her first time loop. When mimics passes through any place, it becomes lifeless, turning water into a murky green color. These mimics ate the earth, drank the water, and spewed out a substance poisonous to life on Earth, but beneficial to alien creatures. It is well known that all living things change their environment by cutting down trees and cultivating the land. They think about a suitable environment to build their homes in, and eventually, their DNA adapts to the new environment. 6 months after she joined the United Defense Force, Rita was transferred to a squad full of veterans. One day during the battle, she got injured and was approached by Lieutenant Arthur, who held the squad together. He had a small talk with her about how the nomadic people in China mix animal blood with their tea, and they actually conquered most of Eurasia in the Middle Ages. Stunned by his talk, she slowly gets to her feet as Arthur continues to say that it is said that these nomadic people gave birth to rumors about vampires. He suddenly asks her if she is getting bored by his story, and when Rita assures him that she is fine, he runs back to the battlefield. Rita stares at his retreating while thinking about how he made this small talk to just distract her. That was when she spotted a strange mimic with an antenna on its back and instantly realized how he was different from others. Before she could even try to understand the situation, she found herself standing in the shower. Shocked, she runs out of the stall and finds that there are still 30 hours before she has to go to the battlefield, even though she is just standing there. That was her first loop, and she experienced it after killing that strange mimic. When she goes into the second loop, she quickly finds that mimic and is determined to find out if time really turns back if she kills it. Her suspicions are confirmed when she finds herself standing in the shower once again. In her third loop, she is still confused about what is happening and considers that this might be a dream. When she hits the 8th loop, she starts to think of a way to get out of this loop. In her 12th loop, she ponders about whether that first mimic is the key to these loops, but whenever she returns to the loop, more mimics are protecting that special mimic. While in the battle, she notices a soldier lying dead in the group, and it surprises her since he is alive in the last loop. Just then, she is attacked by the mimic and returns to another loop. Rita realizes that her 20mm rifle is not very effective, and she will die if she goes against all those mimics. She is determined to find out more about those mimics and wants to look into all the research documents, rumors, or anything that can give her the slightest information. She also wants to replace her 20mm and goes to Shasta to discuss that. She tells her that there has been a report stating that the skin of mimics is evolving and shows her a prototype of a weapon, saying that it fires stakes. Rita interrupts her, saying that she needs something that will not run out of ammo, while thinking about how she needs a weapon that can kill every mimic on the battlefield. That was when she got her axe and started killing all the mimics that she faced. Eventually, she started to understand that the secret behind the strength of the mimics lies in this loop. It is proof of her theory that the strange mimic memorizes her moves from the last loop and then adds new reinforcements to stop her in this new loop. She figured that the mimics keep rewinding the time to fight against humans, and it is just like hitting the reset button on a video game when you are stuck in a tough position. This makes this battle so much easier for them, but if they are really doing this, there must be some rules for how this whole thing works. She wants to solve the mystery, and as she recalls the dying face of Arthur, she is determined to get out of this loop and win this battle. Rita stands there bored as Arthur shows the picture of his newborn daughter to everyone. The other soldiers congratulate him, saying how he already sounds like a doting father. Rita also mumbles congratulations, but she is tired of repeating this every day and can't even keep count anymore. As everyone is still gushing over the picture, Rita again remembers Arthur's dead body and runs away from there as the excruciating headache hits her. The pain seems to be getting worse with every loop, and she is confused if it also has something to do with the time loop. Just then, she finds a report on mimics that says something about tachyon particles that can travel through time. She is still confused about how those mimics keep looping the time. Deep in her thoughts, she doesn't notice Shasta and accidentally bumps into her, making everything in her hand fall to the ground. Quickly apologizing, she gives a hand to Shasta, but she is not focused on Rita and just wishes that the chips are not broken. Rita is surprised since this didn't happen in the last loop and asks Shasta if these things are very important. Shasta tells her that they are extremely important as they are external memory units. Seeing Rita's confusion, she explains that they are used to record the data of every soldier fighting on the battlefield, including changes in their biometrics, the effects, their actions, attack patterns, and every move they make. Rita curiously asks why they do that, to which Shasta replies that this data is gathered inside the Defense Forces server for analysis so they can use it for future operations. Rita finally understands that they are doing the same thing as mimics and helps Shasta gather her chips. Before leaving, she turns around and says that since Rita is the superstar and a very important soldier, she has a backup copy of her data in case the server crashes. Rita perks up to hear that as she finally realizes that the mimic with the antenna is acting as a mimic server because it analyzes the situation and then rewinds the time. If this is the case, there must be a backup that mimics everything. Since she looped back even after destroying the server mimic, it must mean that there was still a backup mimic active at the time. She figures that it must be a mimic network and is ecstatic to finally find a possible answer. Rita is aware that she has to destroy the entire network to get out of this loop, and for that, she needs to follow a specific sequence. When she goes on the battlefield next time, she first destroys the antenna of the mimic server because it is what emits the tachyon particles. Her second step is to destroy the backup mimics and then destroy the mimic server. Once she got through all the steps, she happily cheered when she didn't loop. Her happiness to escape the loop is crushed when she finds that Arthur has died in the battle. She stares at the soldiers wailing beside Arthur's body, and she just can't grasp why he has to die in this loop. She is devastated and thinks that she should have already known this because she has experienced it once. After experiencing the time loop, Rita is now able to beat the odds and save certain people in the future. But there are still many people she can't save. There is no war where everybody stays alive, and she concluded that everything would have led to death. After the battle in Florida, a top-secret research team was created to study the time loop. They performed a detailed analysis of Rita's body, especially her brain. After going through several loops and getting exposed to tachyon particles, Rita's brain structure has been altered. It was just an accident, but when Rita killed the mimic server for the first time, her exposure to the tachyon particles triggered the time loop. Her time loop was very fortunate for her and other humans because after getting hold of the power to loop time, she traveled all over the world as a sole weapon against those mimics. After going through 211 loops, Rita grew strong and reached new heights that were impossible for anyone else. Her only goal was to get rid of every single mimic and bring victory to the human race. To achieve her goal, she continues to fight alone. Standing in the sky lounge of the Flower Line base, she stares at the soldiers doing training, spotting Kiji struggling to hold his posture.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.